Saltwater History, episode 122. A little different. This is Saturday. Richard, what's going on?
Quite the curveball on a Saturday. I'm liking
Yeah,
it. I'm liking it. I feel the energy. The weekend energy is here.
yeah. This is a little different for me. I feel like we've probably recorded on every day of the week by now, maybe, but something
Maybe without
about,
Saturday.
yeah, something about the Wednesday night. It's just like a great over the hump part of the
Yeah,
week is knocking the episode out, but
that's true.
I have to do it. I have to do it on Saturday.
Gotta give the people what they want, Charlie. You gotta get the people what they want.
Yeah. Speaking of giving the people what they want, something that we've known for a little bit, but have been private about, is you going on
The
this.
Delingpod.
That's a great way of saying it. The Delingpole.
Yeah.
I just want to hear your total thoughts on it. The whole experience, the release, the reaction, filming with James. Give us everything.
Yeah, God. I love James Delingpole, and his podcast is just the bee's knees, and I'm just was thrilled to be on with him. And when he approached me about doing the episode, I said, "Well, anytime, anywhere, you name it, we'll make it work." And then he asked me about topics or what we should do in terms of the concentration. But at the end of that query, he said, "Do you want to just do a ramble? We could do a ramble." And I said, "I want to do a ramble with James Delingpole, right? Just not know where he's going to go with it." And sure enough, I mean, you can attest to this, Charlie, having listened to the episode. We talked about everything from St. Francis Xavier all the way through to, oh, what else? Whether the Jesuits are a pseudo Jewish conspiracy, the founding, and um, even flat Earth stuff. So, yeah, it was a many rabbit hole trodden journey, and I loved every minute of it. And I suspect that my energy and enthusiasm, as well as his, came through within the episode.
Yeah. That was the episode you guys, it seemed like you went everywhere.
Yes.
The Is there anything you wish you had back? Is there anything that you wish listening to it back, you wish you could have expressed differently or
Not so much, I suppose, with hindsight being 2020. I mean, I think I pushed back enough on him regarding, his suspicion, outright rejection of Catholicism. I mean, he has the old Protestant line about, oh, Jesus didn't intend to do this with all these divisions within the Christian community thing. And I think I did a sufficient job of just allowing, and he's such a critical and open-minded thinker. Open-minded, I know that is such, it's almost pejorative now to use that term, but he truly is a critical and open-minded thinker. So when I said that, for example, when I was listening to his episode with Alistair Williams, which is a fantastic episode with by the way, number one comedian in the UK, he won that award, Alistair Williams, and they were talking about their equal mirthful descent into the rabbit hole of Christianity. And they were talking about just the nature of Christ. Their Christology was so low, and their ecclesiology, or their understanding of the role of the church in Christianity and the role of the Holy Spirit acting providentially within the church, was so what we call low, low Christology, low pneumatology, which means low presence of the Holy Spirit, and such a very base, almost vanilla type of ecclesiology that I called him out. And then he agreed. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's compared to Catholics and the Ortho Bros. That's absolutely true." And that, unfortunately, when we were talking about the both prudence but also the justification for the deployment of violence when it comes to matters of faith, particularly with the Albigensian heresy, I mean, we have to understand, as much as he was And to a degree, I could be sympathetic toward the Catholic Albigensians. But remember, the Albigensians were people that denied not just whole swaths of revelation, particularly in the Old Testament, but they denied the essential goodness of created matter. And then did so to the point where they were, for example, refraining from reproduction. They were killing children. I mean, these type of things, so as to prohibit the instantiation of more material things. And of course, as he relayed in his own experience in going to South or Southern France, is that when you go to Albi Cathedral, yeah, that was built as a sign that, yeah, the church is retaking this territory. I mean, we have to remember Louis de Montfort, Saint Louis de Montfort literally fought against the Albigensians. They were doing heinous things. And so when you have that type of uh, heretical doctrine that leads to both real world practical and not just theoretical or what we might call even theological or philosophical differences that not only imperil the soul, but in very many ways imperil human beings and humanity, you can understand why Louis de Montfort and Dominic, and even as I argued, Thomas spent a great deal of time not just refuting, they did so out of charity to crush this abominable heresy and ideology that was detrimental to, well, not just Christianity, but humanity. So I think that exchange was, it bore a lot of fruit. It was helpful for people.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
a little wonkish if it was, and I apologize for
why
that.
do you say that?
Just that I did get some feedback from listeners and audience members and people who frequent the website saying that the Catholic Christian details of the podcast got a little wonky
Mm.
and technical. And I'm sure if we had another hour or so, I mean, we have to understand too that I'm speaking with someone who is one of the foremost intellectuals, although he wouldn't like me saying this, in the Western world and Western civilization.
Right.
But I would say on the globe, on this flat Earth, perhaps that we're living on. But uh, so I'm having an exchange with him. So in our conversation, I did lose to an extent, and maybe this is what I would change. I did lose the sense of that we're not just talking to each other, but we're also speaking with and addressing an audience that might not be up on all of the lingo and the like. What were your takes on it as you listened to it?
I thought it was I didn't
Pregnant
really know
pause
what
by
to
Charlie
expect.
Westerman.
I didn't really know what to expect
Okay.
because it's just like obviously I listened to you and obviously I listened to him a ton. And I remember getting this feeling of excitement just before hitting play.
Okay.
like like during these next 2 hours, you're gonna hear something that I don't think you were quite ready to hear yet. Like
Yeah.
there could be something that held. You talked about this with it was either you or James. I think it was you about the rabbit hole, about entering the rabbit hole, and that when you enter, you're kind of saying to yourself, something that I hold deeply is going to get shifted here or has the chance of being
Yes.
removed. That's
Correct.
exactly how I felt before hitting play, is that I think I know these guys pretty well, but something's going to change after listening
Okay.
to this.
Did we
Uh,
hold up our end of the bargain there? Not that it
So,
was a conscientious bargain, but did we fulfill that expectation?
yeah, I don't think that I was, well, I didn't think I was completely shook by anything that was said. I
Mm.
think that there were a lot of details on the Chicago history that was really cool for me
Hmm.
to, you guys talked a lot about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So learning a lot about that was really cool, but I prepared I might have over prepared myself mentally, mentally for it. And it didn't end up being like, for example, some people just listening to that and hearing you guys talk just so nonchalantly about, oh, I'll give you one. Taylor
Okay.
Swift being a dude about that. Like
You think she's a woman?
I haven't even considered that. So, and maybe this is the part where I'm in Normieville here, where you and James, I was shaken by that. I was shaken by Delingpole. Your former pupil, he seems like seems
A
like
normie.
a normie.
I had, I did I do an adequate job of defending you there? I said, oh no, I think Charlie's pretty much down on everything we say.
Yeah, you eventually was came to the correct conclusion, I would say.
Yeah,
That
well, his former sidekick on London Calling was Toby Young, I think is his name. And he's too normie, like kind of milk toast mainstreamer. That's why they don't do the podcast anymore. Because he's like Toby's a total cuck, and you're not that. So thank God, because we wouldn't be doing the podcast
right,
anymore.
I was gonna say.
Right. Well, but out of charity, he was concerned that I was being pulled down Normie into Normieville with you.
Yeah. You said you should come on the podcast, and that was like his first concern is like, is your former student a normie?
Have you
So
rescued your former pupil?
yeah.
Because he
And
sounds quite normie. No, he's good. He's cool.
yeah, so I'd be curious to learn where he got that from. I have some ideas, but
Okay.
I'd be interested to learn more about that. But
Maybe listen to the last episode and you're like, this not
yeah,
if
see
people
something like
listen to us,
that.
Gary, they might sound this sounds very harsh and not so good, you know? And so I don't maybe we should couch this in saying that we love everyone and that we should listen to Party Coggan songs.
Yeah, I do
Gather us in the lost and forsaken.
that was an all our welcome moment for sure.
Yeah.
There's still some of those.
And then James is listening and I go, no me. That's a
Right.
no me.
Right. What were we
Anything else
talking
about the
about?
episode?
What were we talking about?
Oh, we're talking
Was
about
I
the
talking about
episode.
I was talking about what was I talking about before that? About, oh yeah, the rabbit hole being shook, Taylor Swift. That one
Uh-huh.
was new to me.
How about Joe Rogan being a woman?
Yeah, that one I didn't even, that one wasn't on my radar. I don't believe that one. Just putting that out there. The
You do
Taylor
believe that
Swift,
one or you don't believe
no,
that
I
one?
don't believe that one. The Taylor Swift one I haven't even thought about, but that seems, I guess I don't believe that one, but
Mhm.
with any of these I could be swayed, I
What
guess.
about what about Big Mike?
Big Mike.
Mike Obama?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that one.
Thank God, because yeah, I don't want to hear James or Bob Moran listen to this one and say, "Oh, that Charlie, he's Toby. He's Toby."
Yeah.
Yeah. Toby's a bad name too. I don't like the name Toby. I had a buddy named Toby when I was um in formation. He actually went to the priesthood. He's a priest now. So I have gotten arguments on with him on Twitter. He's too he's a Canadian resurrectionist. Good guy at heart, really good guy. But man, has he been Francis.
Mm.
When you say Francis toward a Catholic today, especially a priest, that's like saying suicided. You're
I get it.
oh, you do. Okay.
Mhm. That was another one. The breaking down of Pope Francis and
Oh,
you saying, I've called him an asshole before, but I think bitch is the better word. You go through like that academic that academic breakdown in your head of what's the
semantically speaking, if we're going to go really into a deep analysis of nomenclature, we should really call him a bitch. By the way, I give credit to James for that. In fact, there were a couple listeners who said That was their favorite part when we called Pope Francis a bitch. Thank God Mark Skousen wasn't listening, or I might be banned from Freedom Fest. Oh, oops. We've been banned from Freedom Fest, essentially. At least banned from speaking either.
He's a
All
bit
because
of
I
a
called.
he's a bit of a bitch, isn't he?
There is something about an English guy saying bitch. I just,
I thought him making the tea break was amazing.
oh yeah, I knew
I
that
think
was
we
going to
need to
happen.
start doing something like that. You
Uh,
know, uh, he you ask, so his son makes this cup of tea for him, and you ask, is he normally like a good tea maker? And he says he could be quite good, but I wasn't on the ball or something like
he
that.
wasn't on the ball on this one. He missed the ball on this one. Yeah, he's just and especially I was just trying. I think the bar was just that I told him before the episode, as long as our episode is better than an ordinary Dick Delingpole episode, with his brother, and had a good laugh about that. And he said, "Well, it was a very low bar, but you passed it." Yeah. So, it's frankly just to maybe put a capstone on this segment of the show because we're talking about a podcast on another show. So,
Yeah.
but it's nice talking with the big boys, you know, talking with Tom Woods. And I think I consider Robbie a big boy, and having, the limited conversations I've had with Dave Smith. I mean, he's a really big boy. Um, and then James Delingpole is a big boy, you know?
Yeah.
So if it ends up that somehow that gets me on to refute basic narratives in history that are detrimental and destructive and altogether etatist, and I can get on Joe Rogan's show, and whether he's a woman or not,
Yeah, I think you
I'll
missed your
have to call him
shot.
Josephina or something
I
like
think you
that.
missed your shot now.
Yeah, maybe. But then again, I already called him
After you called him
on
a
the episode with
child.
Kennedy Hall. I called him a dunce, so I'm sure that didn't help. Which
Yeah.
he really is. I mean, albeit someone who I deeply respect and admire, Dave Smith loves Joe Rogan. I am not. I don't hold him in any kind of high esteem. I appreciate the fact that he's created a very popular podcast and forum wherein people can feel quite free and open to espouse viewpoints that would otherwise be verboten. But at the same time, he is non-committal on pretty much everything. And it's quite easy. Everybody bemoans the idea that there are ideologies that somehow blind individuals from constructive criticism or development of what's called doctrine or worldview. But remaining agnostic and non-committal on everything is in and of itself an ideology. And that's what he is. His ideology is, well, sort of free speech. And then, of course, when he's accused of being a racist, he does everything to kowtow and bend over to the mob. So, yeah, that's where that stands. I'd much rather go on Delingpole 10 times than be on Joe Rogan once.
So I think that this is your kind of spot in this space to
Mhm.
grow is the mix of Catholicism and the rabbit hole.
Yes.
And because I think so much
And
of this,
anarcho-capitalism. I just don't think that there's anyone in that, both in academia, but in sort of the podcast, general intellectual discursive environment. That's, I mean, a case in point to prove that is that when Scott Scheller, who we met up with, who's a member of the Free State Project, and we had his wife Bernarda on, right? And when we were talking about going to Pork Fest, which by the way is happening, I think next week. Yeah, I think it's next week. Um, yeah, we can't go, but we were talking about it, and sure enough, we proposed to him about having a kind of hot water history / Catholic booth or area. He's like, whoa, shit, I've never, no, I know we don't have that. So, I mean, imagine if we had a traditional Latin mass at Porkfest. People could check it out. They could also be graced by the mere presence of the divine made holy imminent, the eighth day of creation, the Eucharist at Porkfest. I mean, that'd be pretty powerful. Let's do that instead of going off to Freedom Fest and making sure I bite my tongue in front of the Mormon CIA cuck Mark Skousen. Did I go too far there?
Well, I think that that is your space is really clearing up the confusion because so much of the rabbit hole stuff leads just directly to atheism,
Okay.
and so much of the obviously our famous debate, the libertarians to Catholic or Catholics to libertarians,
Right.
but also just clearing up that yes, Pope Francis is the Pope, that's his title, but just because we're not Catholics because of Pope Francis or an earthly leader. We're Catholics because of this, and this, and why it's true versus, and that's something that I think is actually encouraging the more I've thought about it, is the growth in the, especially the traditional sectors of the church under this papacy. It shows that people aren't attaching to the church because of a popular earthly figure. It's because
Let's hope it's not just a contrarian impulse, but that it's rooted in a true desire to seek, know, and love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. That's if that's where it comes from, right? So I don't want to see the moment we have a reversion to an actual Orthodox successor to Peter, that all of a sudden the energy is lifted out of the air is out of the balloon toward orthodoxy and tradition, right? Like for example, the anti-war movement was just absolutely crushed by Obama getting elected, right? And making all those empty promises that he never fulfilled, from no more drone attacks. No, we're just going to have a kill list, an unconstitutional and illegal kill list, and then we're going to drone the shit out of the Middle East, all the while not closing Guantanamo Bay. So you can't have a figure like that who's a an outward conservative and then doesn't enact immense reforms rooting out the evils that have insinuated themselves into the church. The individuals, too, the figures that have insinuated themselves in the highest ranking offices of the church. That's got to be cleansed. And with that help, with Mary's help, I was always a great line from a good Dominican I once knew is that you don't want to be in the way of a Jewish woman who needs to clean house. So hopefully that comes in haste, Lord, right?
right.
And your mother to do that.
I want to talk about the sun.
Oh, yes. This is huge. This is huge. Charlie is proven right again. Now, due deference to the great Charlie Westerman. This podcast already sounds a lot like Dave and Robbie, because Dave and Robbie, I'm part of the problem. They have this uh, humble tendency. I think it's a good and virtuous one, of noting that whether it's from Russiagate to COVID, all of the seminal and important issues of our day, they call it out. They are right from the very beginning in calling out bullshit on these things. And no, they don't take credit in the sense that they're saying, aha, I told you so, that sort of spirit. It's just absolutely true. It's right to indicate that when you're right and calling out these things that are mechanizations particularly of evildoers, those of ill will, and their favorite mechanism and vehicle, the state, it's right to, well, point that out. And Charlie has been right about the sun. So go ahead, Charlie. Explain where you should be taking your victory lap.
Well, I'm curious why you think I'm right. Like, what's the point that you're
Yes,
saying
well,
that's confirmed?
correct. Well, the biggest thing is that Jimmy Dore, the comedian, has been really heroic on his deconstruction of the COVID regime and really all of the medical, pharmaceutical, warfare, welfare state that Pfizer has and AstraZeneca and others and Eli Lilly have created. And of course, the elected officials who are in their pockets. And he just spoke of at some length on his show about all of this research that's coming out that has been compiled by a guy named on Twitter, he's called the Midwest Doctor. And he has these studies that show that, of course, the the benefits of, for example, sun exposure are in innumerable. Whereas the detriments to trying to shelter yourself from the sun are not only innumerable, but in terms of health and wellness, physical wellness, catastrophic. And that really since the 1970s and 80s, wherein you had, again, big pharmaceutical companies colluding with local and even federal governments the world over, talking about UV radiation causing skin cancer, causing skin cell carcinoma and melanoma and all these things. Of course, what the real medical research shows is that the skin cancers that are the most deadly are the ones that you acquire from not having sun exposure rather than the ones that do. The survival rate of those cancers, if you want to call them that, are that emerge from sun exposure is enormously high. It's like 100%. Whereas the skin cancers that are acquired from you living a kind of vampire life, by the way, the same one that the government and governments the world over enforced and mandated on people during the COVID hysteria, as if they were, again, intentionally trying to eliminate segments of the population, even wide swaths of the population in an intentional and formal sense. Those are the cancers that are the most deadly and fatal. And so you're calling this out. And I remember this years and years ago. This is when we were in South Dakota for Freedom Fest. What was that, 2021 or 2022? I can't remember what year it was when we were there. It was 2021, I think, right? In South Dakota. And you're like, nah, sun. And it has all the sunscreens that are marketed all have benzene or whatever it's called, already proven to be carcinogenic and toxic for you. So anyway, you've just been proven correct over and over again by the substantial scientific literature that isn't just peer reviewed or isn't just, a Pfizer study that has no placebo or test group. It's been stated over and over again. And what I find so revelatory is that, again, it bucks the narrative, it bucks the establishment narrative. And what we're seeing now is that whether we're talking with James Delingpole or you and I are speaking or talking about just the awake, the more that you have a story, the more that you have an inclination that bucks the accepted norms, the more in turn it's proven to be true and beneficial for humanity. Sorry, I spoke too long. You go.
So one thing I was looking at this weekend is just the pricing difference between bottles of sunscreen versus these jugs of coconut oil. Because usually, and I didn't mention this on my episode where I just went kind of in on this, but the problem with coconut oil is that it's super cheap.
Yes. Charlie, the problem with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine is that it's super cheap, right?
Exactly.
Remdesivir is not
So
super cheap.
these $11 bottles of sunscreen versus these $4 big jars of coconut oil,
Right.
which one's easier to make? And the spray makes it even more consumable too, because you can just lose some to the air.
Yeah. Right.
So
Because
it,
if you admit that there are these homeopathic and traditional and let's face it, cultural remedies, tribal remedies, let's call them, provincial remedies that are functional and actually work, well, then what does that do to the pharmacological welfare warfare credentialed MD state and corporate structure? It strikes them at the cornerstone. It strikes them at the foundation, especially as it's all the more apparent and quite evident that the whole, I mean, at this point, when doctors take the Hippocratic Oath before receiving the MD after their name, I mean, does anyone not chuckle at those ceremonies? I mean, they themselves must, in the back of their mind, go, do no harm. Uh-huh.
when do they recite that?
I
Do you know when?
you got me. I think it's at their graduation when they obtain their medical degrees. But it could be well, I guess it doesn't make sense if they passed the MCAT or something like that. That doesn't make sense, right? So it'd have to be, or is it in their entrance to medical school? I
So
don't
I've
know.
I've just never heard anyone actually say do no harm.
They all have to. I'm 95% sure that they all have to take upon licensure. They all have to recite the Hippocratic Oath, or they're called to or expected to
I've
in a
heard that
formal.
too. I've just never heard that actually happen.
Right.
So
Maybe that's a myth.
I'm kind of curious when that actually takes place.
Maybe that's a myth.
That's what I'm kind of getting at, is that what if it, but I'm more curious. I probably don't think it's a myth, but
Mm.
I've never actually, if someone knows a doctor that knows that, that's a
Is
cool
there a more
doctor.
is there a more insidious wink wink nod nod in the history of humanity than the modern PhD, or I'm sorry, the modern MD who says the Hippocratic Oath before a crowd of people?
Yeah, like is it even in front of a crowd? Do they have their hand on the Bible? What's
They
the
certainly don't have their hand on the Bible, Charles.
I just have never seen that actually go down. So
Yeah, I'd like to find
I'd
out.
like
I'll
to
have to ask some
dig more
doctor
into that.
friends. Ask some doctor friends if they're still speaking with me.
Yeah. So the sun's good for you. Breaking
Yeah,
news.
breaking news, and you were on board with that way before, and even when I was talking about sunscreen or putting it on, you're like, nah, come on, that's insane. Don't be stupid. Let your body, let your skin soak in the vitamin D and the science, the true science, actual science, convincing science has proven you to be correct. I want to make mention too of speaking of wellness and just physical health. Uh, I just the episode on the Delingpod after mine was with Sasha Latipova, which she worked in the pharmaceutical industry. She's basically the Ukrainian American version of Dr. Mike Yaden, who worked for Pfizer and worked in pharmaceuticals, and she's deconstructed all of this. She's she has just reams and reams and papers upon papers about how the clear purpose of really the vaccine industry is to wipe out a segment of the population. And I think if you listen to her and you understand too that, as I said to James in the most complimentary way possible, is that what he's assembled in his cadre of guests are people that have a census of a sense of from the Latin, the reality, they they know the unseen as well as the seen, right? So they're boldly willing to explicate it with him and with anyone. And like he said, we don't have a lot of numbers in our team, but we have a crack team, right? We have a good team. And that's reassuring because remember, the great movements of history were not led by often a majority or a supermajority of people. It was led just by the most persuasive, articulate, the most gifted, the most passionate people, both evil and good on those sides, who were willing to, pretty much risk everything to their end. Whether it was the Bolsheviks, sadly, in 1917, or it's, you know, think of some good. Oh, how about a band of 12 men who just saw their best friend crucified, believed what he said, and then saw him rise from the dead? Nothing more transformative than that. They were willing to get flayed. They were willing to get crucified. They were willing to do anything to share that message with the world.
True. White pill. You want to talk about a town that is ruled by the majority?
Yeah, talk about the a town that proves that democracy is the god that failed. Here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Meanwhile, in Oak Park, we got a couple. Let me pull this up. OPRF board keeps racial equity a priority in strategic plan. Plan was approved with a vote of 5-1.
Oh.
I'm gonna take guesses on the one.
Wait, is this the school board or is this the? Oh yeah, it's the Board of Education. So Ravi's not on there, right?
We're taking bets. Oh, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Oh, it
Despite
was Mary Ann Mohanraj, right? I'll
oh
let you read. Sorry, I
yeah,
was
it's
just
it's about to be a hit piece.
yeah.
Despite push from one board member of the despite push from one board member. Can you imagine that? That's how they start the
What kind of
article.
what kind of framing is that?
Just yeah, we had this they were really keeping us back from our other 5 votes.
Yeah, correct. Here are we, the people operating with integrity, and here comes this push, this immense momentum that was built up from one person on the board to challenge our
I
doctrines.
can't believe that's how they start the article.
Yeah.
But I can believe it actually. Despite push from one board member of the OPRF High School Board of Education to broaden the equity goal, the board approved of maintaining racial equity, the number one priority for the district.
That's
That's the
can we
number
pause
one
there?
goal.
That's the number one goal of a high school is racial equity. That's I don't see the difference, albeit analogous, as I'll make this point, from Mitch McConnell standing up and saying, and Chuck Schumer saying that the number one priority of the United States right now is defending Ukraine, right?
Right.
Misguided objectives and misdirected and inordinately pursued goals end up being just catastrophic, deleterious. Go ahead.
The board approved of the strategic plan with a vote of 5-1, with board member Mary Ann Mahanraj voting against the plan.
What is with
During
these Indian guys and ladies, huh? They're sticking their beaks, or they're sticking their nose into stuff that they're being contrarian a little bit. Go ahead.
During an earlier April meeting, Mahanraj expressed concern that focusing primarily on race under priority one outlined in the strategic plan 2023-2028 was too narrow. Mahanraj maintained that position during the April 25th meeting. Quote, I don't see it as deprioritizing, Mahanraj said. I think racial equity absolutely has to be a priority. I also think gender equity has to be a
Oh,
priority.
here we go.
I think disability equity. And honestly, I would throw in class. I would throw in a couple of things. When you elevate one over the others, what happens is that ends up driving what data gets collected and what gets presented and what administration works on. Mohan Raj expressed her concern over the lack of attention given to intersectionality because other data, such as students identifying as LGBTQ and other indicators, is not being collected.
Well, then there we are. We have it. They're just not being as broad in the spectrum of critical school, critical theory as they should be. Way to go, Marianne, you bold trailblazer.
Quote, it is often the matter of being aware of many intersecting concerns and weighing them. And I just feel like by stating racial equity at the beginning, it skews the weight, she said. And I think it has affected things in a negative way. And I would like to see that changed. Board member Audrey Williams Lee disagreed. Quote, when you look at where we are in this country and what the issues are, it is always about race. Williams Lee said, quote, it is always about particularly Black people.
Is it? Is it?
Let me read that quote again. When you look at where we are in this country and what the issues are, it is always about race, Williams Lee said. Quote, it is always about particularly Black people. So does she actually believe that?
Oh, Charlie, come on. They believe they are true believers. They are adherents, baby.
So they don't see any of the foreign wars or inflation or
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
health
Migrant crisis.
health migrants.
Yeah. Nothing like that, right? The crushing of the middle class, the, I don't know, murder of millions of kids every year through abortion. Nah, come on.
The approved strategic plan is similar to previous ones as it still includes, quote, transformative leadership and, quote, transformative leadership. That's actually what it says in the Wednesday Journal.
That's what it says. They doubled down. It's not just no, it's double transform. That's really transformative. Once you transform the leadership, you gotta transform it again.
You gotta be kidding me, Wednesday Journal.
Stop you cannot stop the transformation, Charlie.
Wednesday Journal, be better.
I swear, I bet they're like, I know these two assholes are doing riffs.
Do you think they know? Do you think they know?
And we're making the younger one, the better looking one, the smarter one read through this. And he's getting pissed. So here we go. We're gonna just mention the same thing twice. Let's get him really pissed off.
The approved strategic plan is similar to previous ones as it still includes, quote, transformative leadership and, quote, transformative leadership. Equity has moved up higher in priority. In a previous plan adopted in 2017, equity was listed as the second goal for the district, with holistic community education listed as the first goal.
Oh my God, they mentioned education. It's not just a social experiment funded by the government by usurpation of taxpayers.
Since that adoption, equity has changed to, quote, racial equity, as shown in the current version. Regarding intersectionality, Williams Lee said that she is a woman who is Black, but often she would be described as a Black woman.
Wait, what?
No, dude. No, dude. I am in a nightmare. Someone wake me up. This is not happening right now. I'm not actually reading this.
Charlie, you're a white man who is also Catholic, but you have also heard yourself described as a Catholic man. And so therefore, we need some government program to root out this insidious evil. All right, go ahead.
I need to read that again just to make sure that something
Now, I
wasn't
should state while you're recovering from that,
something wasn't in my eye.
you said before the episode that this Meanwhile in Oak Park, that the references, the articles that you picked, they're okay. We're not. And I said, well, we'll have to make something great of it. And look what they've done. They've done our job for us, Charles.
Regarding intersectionality, Williams Lee said that she is a woman who is black, but often she would be described as a black woman. What is that?
Don't read that again. I'm getting a cramp in my ribs. I got an intercostal cramp. Go for it.
Regarding intersectionality, Williams Lee said that she is a woman who is black, but often she would be described as a black woman.
I said, don't read it again.
Like, what else would we describe you as? Being a woman who is black.
And of course, if you described her as black, period, or a woman, she'd flip out, right?
Quote, the issues that we have in this school all tend to be primarily racially driven, she said.
Now, can I pause here? This is an important point, though, because remember that what they're trying to solve is the immense disparities in racial student performance between and among the races, right?
Right.
And this isn't the first time that they've attempted to address this by every means they can conjure up possible, right? So as it continues on and as it persists, what I think we're seeing is this angst and rage because what they're doing is not working. And the more they try, the more they implement, the more they conjure up, the more that it's applied, and preferential treatment toward Black students is promoted and then made instantiated in the school. Well, then, what are they doing? It's not working. Nothing that they're doing is working. So that's got to be immensely frustrating, right? To the point where they're going to have to, at some point, admit there's something wrong here. That something more essential to the whole notion of education has to be altered to address the disparities, which are much more along lines of not race, but class or what have you. And notice how everything's tribal too. Everything's very communal. I mean, why not just treat the kid as an individual? And we have this particular child has a learning disability, or this particular child was traumatized by COVID and the lockdowns and wearing a mask for 2 years on their face, and telling this poor child at the time that he was a disease carrier and that he was going to be infectious for everyone and causing grandma to die. Instead of treating an individual like that, they just want to say race. It's inane tribalism.
Putting racial equity as the priority sets it up so the district does not lose sight of the predominant issue, Williams-Lee said. To properly address any of the other issues, the systemic racism needs to be addressed, she said. Taking race out of the equation would be a mistake. Board member Fred Arkin echoed that sentiment, saying that just because the district focuses on race, it doesn't mean neglecting other factors. Quote, keeping the name racial equity keeps it in front of the important work that we need to continue because we are not there yet and we still have a long road to go, Arkin said. Board member Jonathan Livingston said that, quote, showcasing and prioritizing race acknowledges the importance of racial equity in this country.
Notice they keep saying the country instead of the village.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because these people think they're so much bigger than they actually are.
The megalomania is just off the charts.
They think they're in Congress.
Yes, not only do they think they're in Congress, they think Congress is effective in doing something. I mean, that's or that they could alter what they perceive as pervasive social injustices. I mean, this is insane.
With racial equity being the priority listed on the strategic plan, the district will work to, quote, eliminate race, socioeconomic status, and other social factors as predictors of students' academic achievement and social emotional growth.
Translation, we're going to war against natural law. I
To
mean,
ach-
notice too that sorry to interrupt. This is ultimately a kind of Rawlsian understanding of, John Rawls wrote the famous theory of justice. It's just this Rawlsian sentiment of that, well, we have to eventually eliminate all of these injustices. And of course, the one that is most, I mean, the ones that are most correlative to student success, like family and socioeconomic factors, of course, then they're at war with free markets because they supposedly create these immense disparities, when in reality, it's their pseudo capitalism that creates it and their real socialism that creates these disparities. But also the institution of the family. That's what they're at. And that's why you see this animus toward any teacher, or I'm sorry, any parent who says that they have priority as an educator to their children instead of the home ec teacher at OPRF high school.
To achieve this goal by June 2028, the district will, quote, implement a comprehensive set of strategies focused on ensuring that students have access to opportunities and resources, using specific metrics such as graduation rates, reduced achievement gaps, increased access to honors and advanced courses, and enhanced student and family satisfaction with school experiences.
Yeah, I wonder how this family satisfaction is of the meritorious AP student whose prospects for getting a 5 and college credit on their exam is made impossible by the fact that they have a kid in there who can't read, and they have to pass their macroeconomic exam, AP macroeconomics. Good luck.
Yeah.
But those
Yep.
those people in Oak Park, those people, will not complain openly for fear of retribution and isolation in that community. Ostracization really is what would happen. And then so they're willing to sacrifice their kid on the altar of equity. Or at least
Yes.
maybe in private, when you have the pull aside of the teacher or superintendent, where the super rich North Park elite will secretly say, "Hey, you can't do this. Janie needs to get into Stanford or Notre Dame."
They also commit to implementing, quote, data-driven resource allocation plan to equitably distribute resources, including funding staff and educational programs. This also includes, quote, increases student performance in areas where there is an achievement gap and improved access to support services for at-risk students. Mohanraj declined to provide additional comments. The new plan lists the top 5 priorities the district is committing itself for the upcoming years. Priority two, under this area, transformative education, the district is to, quote, take a holistic, supportive, and transformative approach to providing engaging, equitable learning experiences. Seriously, do they just have like a thesaurus that they reference to just throw in new words?
Yes, it's from the ASA, or the Psychological Dictionary of Abnormal Behaviors.
Goals include increasing the number of Black students who are meeting growth targets by 10% and increasing the number of Hispanic students meeting growth targets by 4% by June 2025, along with increasing by 2%, quote, the number of students overall who meet growth targets on the PSAT, SAT math test. Additionally, they plan to add 2 more approved endorsements to their college and career pathway endorsement opportunities, by August 2026. Priority 3, labeled Transformative Leadership. This priority will guide the district to, quote, hold leaders to high expectations and responsibilities, policies, practices, and professional development, and create opportunities that support effective teaching, learning, and leadership. According to Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Roxana Sanders, an example of, quote, transformative leadership would be, quote, holding leaders responsible for selecting and hiring highly qualified, diverse candidates. Okay. This transformative leadership thing just keeps getting thrown around. So I'm glad they at least gave me some example of what they're going for.
And they only listed it once here.
Quote, our leaders participate in recruitment events, must engage in implicit bias training prior to being part of a hiring committee, and follow standardized hiring protocols to make the best hiring decisions, Sanders said.
Wouldn't it be fun if I just went in as an applicant and got and wore a GoPro? If I could get past the first,
You wouldn't even
no,
give
they'd sniff out,
a breath
sniff me
from
out pretty
them.
fast.
The district also plans to increase workforce diversity with a, quote, specific focus on increasing representation of faculty of color to 35% by August 2028, as well as to improve their employee retention with a, quote, specific focus on increasing the retention rate of support staff of color to 90%.
And those most likely are two contradictory and negatively correlated goals. Minority achievement and an affirmative action hiring quota process for the leaders in the school. I mean, what would they say if we just proposed that if you hired all these, let's say you hired all white teachers, but the black kids performed and narrowed the achievement gap? Do you think they would do it? No chance.
Oh, that's tricky. I don't think they would.
No, because it's all about optics. It's not actually about the welfare of the students.
According
That'd be a great question to ask them, wouldn't
that
it?
way, you should. That's a village board type meeting you ask,
Yeah.
or school board meeting.
Sure.
You'd get probably tarred and feathered, but
Get the Alex Stein 99 treatment.
according to the 2023 Illinois report card, 75.4% of teachers at OPRF are white, 9.4% black, and 9.2% Hispanic. According to the report card, 52.5% of students at OPRF are white, 19.8% are black, and 14.6% are Hispanic. Okay, so they want the faculty to be 35% faculty of color. Right now it's at about 18 and a half.
Well, wait a second. Wasn't it 35% black specifically? Oh no, faculty of color. You're right. Sorry. So right now it's 18. So you're talking about a doubling.
They essentially want to double.
Right.
And keep in mind, that's a percentage. It's not like they're not adding more classes.
Correct.
So what's going to happen there?
I don't know. Yeah.
Board member Graham Brisbane said this goal is a, quote, kicking the can down the road because it's the same goal the district has had for the past 5 years. Quote, I would put the administration on notice that I am really going to be asking for, as you led into your personnel reporting in the fall, what are the specific strategies and tactics that we are doing to try to actually close the 20 basis point gap between our students of color and our faculty of color, Brisbane said. I just, for one, will be super interested in detail for that one.
Well, we got our answer to my question about whether they would forego hiring people just because they're teachers of color, if indeed the results for the students were better. Well, we got our answer from Graham Brisbane. Can you think of a more white progressive Oak Park name? I mean, how many Graham Brisbanes make up the population of Greater Oak Park? 90 to 95%. We need less Graham Brisbanes to be sure.
Priority 4, in quote, operations, facilities, and finances, the district intends to quote, make fiscally responsible, student-centered decisions that allocate resources to ensure excellence and equity for all. One of the 4 goals includes creating a long-term technology plan to meet the needs of all learners by June 2025.
Snoozer.
Priority 5, in terms of communications, officials aim, quote, support the district's mission and goals by facilitating effective, timely, transparent, and two-way communication with internal and external audiences. By June 2026, the district aims to have most parents of color and non-English speaking parents report they are satisfied with communications on surveys, and by June 2027, have the number of community stakeholders who rate the communications, quote, excellent or above average, increase from 35% to at least 50%. Okay, so that's the segment. That's Meanwhile in
That's
Oak
it.
Park.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Yeah, drop the guillotine on this one. God, is that but prototypically Oak Park, right? That is the epitome of Oak Park.
Every week it just gets more far gone.
Yeah, it's amazing to chronicle though, isn't it? I enjoy
I do
the
enjoy
progression to damnation.
documenting. I do enjoy that we've documented
Mhm.
this,
Right.
that it's so lost.
I know, but there is a healthy amount of Schadenfreude in all this, right?
I guess.
I think so. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. We can enjoy it from afar, thanks be to God. I do feel bad for the kids, and I do feel bad for the innocents who are swept up in it. But then again, you decided to move to Oak Park, and you decided to stay. This is a
Yeah.
good episode, Charlie. This is a good episode.
Pray for Tridentine Brewing.
Yep.
'Cause
Buy
Trevor,
stuff from
Trevor
Trinity
asked.
Brewing.
Yep. So
I dedicated my chaplet of St. Michael to Trevor and the Alcorns and
that's
the family.
beautiful.
He's going to have some angelic help coming his way. So I hope that's the case.
Awesome.
All right. Well, until next time.
Yeah, until next time. Peace out, everyone.
Peace.